April 2025. Global stock markets suddenly went into a panic. Exciting diving show. The U.S. stock market has been on a 2-day slump. The index tumbled 4,000 points in 48 hours. For the first time in history, 2 consecutive days, a record drop of more than 1,500 points in a single day. The Nasdaq fell like a flash crash. A 1-day decline of more than 5%. Biggest drop since epidemic crash in 2020. Japan's Nikkei index also suffered a bloodbath. It plummeted nearly 8% in a single day, triggers the activation of the trading circuit breaker mechanism. European stock markets are also grieving. Canadian stocks fell nearly 5% in a single day. The market fear index VIX has doubled in a week, half the level of the peak of the epidemic. Investors' panic is palpable. This series of plunges, global investors are stunned. Can't help but wonder if this is just an appetizer. Is it just a small overture? Although the stock market experienced a terrifying week of decline, but an insider warns, this may not be a real crash. Just a little wind and waves before an epic storm. Looking back at the first 3 months of this year, the stock market has actually shown signs of weakening. Major indexes peaked and fell in February. S&P. In mid-March, it was corrected by about 10% at a higher point. But in early April, a series of actions by the United States rapidly worsened the decline. Global panic mode. Even so, some wily capitalist predators believe that the current decline, at best a correction at the end of a bull market, the real crash is still on the way. After all, compared to the lumbar-style plunge of the 2008 financial crisis, the current decline is still minor. A truly desperate storm. Maybe not yet. Now that sounds a little bit crass. But conspiracy theorists are already looking for clues. Is there really an unwashed hand? A bigger ancient disaster is deliberately brewing behind the scenes. The current decline? Could it be just the U.S. government and China? A play played by the rich and powerful of the street. The goal is to provoke a more severe global financial crisis. Even those who don't usually trade stocks, people are starting to panic, even joking about going to the rooftop. Maybe that old saying is being fulfilled. The darkest hour is yet to come, before a more terrifying crash really comes. We need to first sort out the context behind this, review the causes of this storm. The dual strategy of the U.S. government and large capitalists, a lot of credit. 2 of the artifacts. One is crazy living. The second is to engage in tariffs. Let's start with interest. Federal Reserve Council. Interest rates have continued to rise since the last 2 years, like hyped up. Move interest rates from near zero. Raise to a high not seen in decades. High interest rates are like a powerful pump. Whistling global funds. Withdraw from the arms of America in all directions. Why? Because money is for profit. U.S. interest rates are high. Dollar assets look both safe and highly rewarding. International capital has naturally flown back to the dollar nest. So, emerging markets and other countries. The devaluation of the local currency is simply unbearable. Federal Reserve Chairperson. Become the switch hand of the global wealth harvester. Live again and again, as if to announce that your money is coming home soon. The beauty prison is calling you. Let's talk about tariffs. The U.S. government has wielded tariffs in recent years. It's perfect. Especially in 2025, the U.S. is playing up the ante. A vigorous tariff. Additional levies are taking place one after another. It's euphemistically called to protect domestic industries, reduce the trade deficit. In fact, it has a strong taste of economic hegemony. The United States has imposed high tariffs on goods from many countries. Not only part-time old rival China, allies in Europe, Japan is not immune. For a while, tariffs have become a nightmare for global markets. This behavior is superficial. It looks like punishing other countries. In fact, it is also forcing global funds. Run to America. Do you think the United States imposes heavy taxes on goods from a certain country? The country's business exports suffered. Economic downturn. Do investors still dare to stay there? The result is capital has been evacuated from those markets subject to U.S. sanctions or pressure. Find a safe haven. The United States is precisely because of its huge market, and it seems less risky. Attracted an inflow of safe haven funds. Therefore, the United States uses both interest and tariffs. Create a global blood-pumping mechanism. Suck money from around the world back into your pockets. One might ask, the United States is not claiming a beacon of free market economics? How to do this kind of spoiler? But the facts speak louder than words. Successive U.S. administrations have defended themselves. Economic benefits, never soft. The United States is currently holding high the banner of anti-inflation, slamming on the brakes, at the same time wielding the tariff knife to slash around. Although the lip service is to maintain fair trade, make your opponent follow the rules. The actual effect is like turning on the wealth vacuum cleaner. Sweep overseas funds and wealth to your side. Some conspiracy theorists simply say, that's not economic policy. Fundamentally, for the upcoming wealth, preparing for the big day, The US government and the big capitalists are in harmony. One out policy. One out of funding. They cut leaks all over the world. It's a tacit understanding. Let's take it apart. How tariffs hit other countries. This results in a transfer of wealth. On the surface, tariffs are just a tax increase on imported goods. It seems that every country can accompany you to the end. Each collects its own tax. But it's not that simple. When the United States imposes high tariffs on the characteristics of a country's goods, the bad days for that country began. First, tariff increases, causing the country's goods to change in the US market. Your competitiveness plummets. Exports fell sharply. Decrease in exports means it's harder for businesses in the country to earn dollars. Foreign exchange earnings plummeted, so the country's currency demand decreases. It starts to depreciate. Take the US-China trade war in previous years as an example. US 1+ tariff. China's RMB exchange rate is under immediate pressure. The downward trend is obvious. Take the United States, waving the stick of tariffs and sanctions against Turkey. The Turkish lira exchange rate at that time, almost on the slide. Thanks all the way. Currency devaluation brings further consequences. Bad knowledge of international funds, worried about the shrinking value of the country's assets. They're pulling out. The tide of foreign selling in the stock market and bond market comes together. Local financial market is worse. Then, the devaluation of the local currency has also sent the country's import prices soaring. Inflationary pressures have skyrocketed. Ordinary people find the money in their pockets even less valuable. Decline in purchasing power. Domestic consumption is also weak. Businesses are facing internal and external problems. You can't make money exporting. Domestic demand is also sluggish. Only cut investment or go out of business. Assets that were previously valuable, whether it's stocks, real estate, or corporate equity, it now appears in the international market. It's as cheap as a discount. Why is it cheap? Because the exchange rate has fallen, asset prices also fell. Double down, wrong down. Let's look at dollars. Simply cheap to sell. So the international trend is dollar millionaires are starting to feel things from these countries. The time to pick up bargains is coming. And here's the thing. Many countries hit by US tariffs. Can't take too long. Depletion of foreign exchange reserves, financial markt, often forcing them to live with the past. Or to international organizations. The economy is in further trouble. At this time, some people have already sharpened their knives and are ready to pick up junk. Whether it is directly entering the stock market to pick up cheap stocks, or take advantage of the low price to acquire high-quality companies, or the overall capture of local real estate. In short, it will kill you while you are sick. Pocket the most valuable asset at the price of cabbage. You could say, tariffs are a series of blows to other countries. Export clothing exchange rate, capital flight, an asset price crash. Layer by layer, final result. It belongs to the people of other countries, and the wealth of the middle class, forced to sell cheaply, left in the hands of people with cash and dollars. And these bargain hunters, often where is not the big American conglomerate, the investment institutions of American allies, or in America, powerful international capital. No wonder someone sighs. Tariff war. In fact, it is a bloodless economic war. The goal is to turn other people's money into your own. For the harvested countries, the local currency fell sharply under the impact of tariffs. Assets were looted. This taste is probably worse than real swords and guns. This game is just bad. But I have to admire, it's really smart and a little more legal. Speaking of plunder, I can't help but mention this, the well-designed routine behind the great transfer of wealth. It's a play of ups and downs. But there is always only one theme. Buying high and selling low is chives. High and low interest rates are the reapers. Let's go behind the scenes. See how the big capitalists play chess. Act 1. Stock market pastry shipments. When the market is good, as the chives rush in, the capitalists in Loyola are quietly preparing to flee. The most informed of them all, the person with the most resources, often better than the average investor, detect the wind direction earlier. During this stock market appraisal in 2025, some bosses began to sell their stocks one after another. Of course, they don't make a big announcement. I'm going to run. Instead, take a step-by-step approach. Put a huge amount of pubic bone in the high position. Slowly sell to the unsuspecting. The skeletons of the pickup men are still hanging high. The surface is calm. In fact, the undercurrent is surging. Retreat before being smart. Ignorant money is happy to take over the baton. After this step is completed, big capital has a lot of cash on its hands, waiting for a good opportunity. Act 2. It's not good enough to sell stocks for short profits. Real master, to make a lot of money when it's down. What do? They use all kinds of financial instruments. From buying put options to shorting stock futures. Even betting through complex derivatives. Market decline. When the stock market starts to decline, ordinary people's book assets have shrunk miserably. And these players who are well prepared, but because the airdrop space was arranged in advance, instead profit from the crash. In other words, Every 1% decline in the market, their wealth may actually increase. It sounds like an open hook. And in fact, people are indeed hanging up. Friends' information, have capital. There is also superb financial engineering. Even some large institutions, you can take action while shorting. Influencing market movements. Make your airdrop part more profitable. This brings us to the next scene. The third act manipulates the news surface. Financial Merrick has a saying, rumors are flying. Stock price falls. The news has a significant impact on market sentiment. The big guys are safe here. They will use the media resources they control. Expert consultant. Even social networks. Spread favorable news at critical moments. For example, after they have stepped out and established an airdrop space, suddenly a certain authority published pessimistic economic forecasts, or some headshot, scary headlines about economic crisis, or a well-known analyst is sinking on TV. The bubble will burst. These messages, it's like adding another dose to the Seiko bird market. The weight of the hammer accelerates the panic. The stock market plummeted on the wind, solemnly. I think so. Sometimes even the voice of the government can be influenced. Later, we will also talk about the coordination of policy and public opinion. Anyway, when the message surface is cleverly manipulated to fuel the flames, leaks are often kept in the dark. Follow the script designed by the bosses. React. Crazy selling. Smash the market to the floor. The old incident of large-scale money printing on the fourth mu. The stock market crash has come to this. The market is wailing. Ordinary people lost a lot. The economy is also on the verge of collapse. At this time, the central bank and the government finally can't sit still. Send the ultimate move. Start the money printing machine. The so-called old thing. The Federal Reserve begins to cut interest rates, even restart quantitative easing, desperately injecting liquidity into the market. Central banks may also be forced to follow suit. For a while, the water filled the Golden Mountain, cheap money everywhere. On the surface, this is to prevent the collapse of the financial system, stabilize the economy. However, please note, who is at this juncture the most capable of catching this wave of rain from the sky? It's those early cash-outs, big capitalists who are profiting from airdrops. They go through the previous operations, already have a huge amount of cash. At the moment, I am worried that there is no place to spend. The central bank releases water. They can raise more money at a very low cost, but more abundant. Act V. Global bottom fishing operation now comes to an end. It is also the most wonderful moment of wealth transfer. Bottom fishing plummets. Asset prices across countries hit rock bottom. Many high-quality company stocks cut in half and then cut in half. Real estate prices plummeted. Even some national sovereign assets are on the verge of being sold. And this time, the capital with a lot of money has begun to sweep the goods. They pay an almost predatory price, buy stocks that are scared to sell, take advantage of the fire acquisition, businesses in financial trouble but with good prospects, or just run and buy it, mines that were forced to sell. Oil fields are not just cheap in the United States. They reach out globally, put on a humble show on every continent. Said earlier, due to tariffs and capital flight, asset prices are particularly low in many countries. It's like the opening of Fortune Supermarket. Of course they won't miss it. They came in droves. Put the world's cheap assets, sweep into your pocket. This is what's called a once-in-a-lifetime bottom fishing opportunity. For ordinary people, it was catastrophic. A dark moment of despair and helplessness. But for the well-prepared rich, it's like a holiday. Just get the sack ready and pick up the money. After the interlocking of these 5 wood scripts is completed, we will find one thing. Global wealth has undergone a major shift. At the previous market high. Pick up the bosses who sell stocks. It's the innocent masses. They were the unlucky ones on guard. At the lowest point in the market, sell cheap stocks. Or the terrified retail investors and bankrupt entrepreneurs. And the purchases have been replaced by wealthy individuals and large institutions. The end is wealth that originally belonged to the middle class and retail investors transferred to the rich and powerful. And all this, they all follow market rules and the banner of policy regulation. It makes sense. I have to. This is so much better than outright robbery. It's a modern version of legal robbery. Someone quipped, wealth doesn't just disappear. Only from people who lack patience and information. Run into the arms of those who are prepared. Come to think of it, that's the truth. Conspiracy is conspiracy. Is there any real evidence? Let's take a look. A few recent weather-vane figures with deep pockets. How does it work? Let's talk about Warren Buffett, who is known as the god of stocks. The 90-year-old investment guru, always value investing. The concept of regular high-quality stocks. However, just as the bull market ends in 2024, his company Berkshire Hathaway, Savid dumped stocks aggressively. Trigger market attention. Berkshire is reported to be in 2024, sold over $130 billion in stock. That's an astronomical number. That's more than we sold in previous years. Through this wave of God operations, Buffett's company accumulated record cash reserves. It is said that by the end of 2024, Berkshire has cash and equivalents up to more than $330 billion, almost twice as much as the previous year. What does that mean? It means that the PACs are in the middle of a bull market. Do the opposite. Big cash out, hoarding cash and waiting for opportunities. And here's what's really amazing. A careful person found Buffett actually reduced his holdings, the most beloved Apple stock, up to 2.3 Apple shares from 900 million, cut to about 300 million shares. At the same time, he also dumped a large amount of Bank of America stock. The inspection range exceeds 30%. These actions are undoubtedly locking in profits at a high level. Reduce risk. Look at another boss, Bill Gates. Although the cover, he is known primarily as a tech billionaire and philanthropist, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. In fact, it is also an investment giant. In the pool of the Gates Fund, Buffett's Berkshire and Microsoft stocks take up the big head. However, the foundation's recent operations, similar traces can also be found. Public information shows that in the second half of 2024, Foundation for 2 consecutive quarters sell a large number of stocks. Only in the fourth quarter of 2024, the foundation reduced its holdings of about 500,000 Microsoft shares and sold nearly 250 million shares. Berkshire stock. What's the result? This season alone, the portfolio size of the Gates Fund, it shrunk by more than $2 billion. It can be seen that the selling amount is not small. Some people might say, the foundation needs funds for charity, so there's nothing wrong with selling stocks. But here's the intriguing thing. Why did you choose to be near the high point of the stock market? Sell out? And even the stocks that they have been in for many years. No mercy. There seems to be only one explanation that makes the most sense. They are not optimistic about the market prospects. Even a premonition of a storm is coming, while Gao is now king. It's not just Buffett and Gates. We reflect on these years. Many plutocrats are actually quietly retreating from high places. Tesla founder Elon Musk in 2021. Tens of billions of dollars in stocks were cashed out in 2022. The reason is to pay taxes or cash in to buy Twitter. No matter the reason, in hindsight, the timing was brilliant. Before tech stocks later plunged, successfully locked in huge profits. Former Amazon CEO Bezos, before the epidemic, sell more than Amazon stock. The actions of these top billionaires, they're not random. They compare. Anyone is better able to understand the overall risk. When they were at the height of the market, sell-off. It's really hard not to think about it. Is this a coincidence? Or a well-planned and meticulous layout? Maybe they won't say, but the act of voting with banknotes, everything has been explained. Anyway, Buffett. Gates high cash. It's like vaccinating us in advance. Their operation is almost shouting, let's go first. Take care, everyone. When the stock gods started hoarding cash to sell stocks, ordinary investors are still partying in the stock market. It really takes a long time. Of course, people are not obligated to remind retail investors. After all, in the drama of wealth transfer, you move quietly before you're smart. These cases once again confirm the previous routine. Capable big players leave their heads early. The leaks that did not run greet the cold winter alone. Capital giants need to complete the transfer of wealth, inseparable from the right time, place, and people. The right time and place part. We've talked about interest and tariffs, but there is still one person, and that is the coordination of policy and public opinion. In this ancient disaster conspiracy theory script, the U.S. government's policy statements and public opinion guidance played the role of God's assistant, like an invisible hand, driving the ups and downs of market sentiment. First, let's talk about policy. The U.S. government and related agencies. Well, there are many ways to influence markets. For example, when the stock market is high, policymakers are sending optimistic signals to the outside world. Emphasize strong economic fundamentals. No mention of bubble risk in stock market valuations. This gives investors a sense that the official says no problem. That must be a good sense of security. So people continue to buy optimistically. It is convenient for big capitalists to take the opportunity to ship. On the contrary, when they want the market to turn down, policy rhetoric often changes. Start emphasizing risk. You will hear officials suddenly talk about overheating markets, financial imbalances, and other topics, or announce some austerity measures. For example, if the Federal Reserve suddenly talks at the high point, said to be closer to life, or U.S. Treasury, began to express concern about market speculation, the market will immediately be silent for 3 points. Start looking for reasons to sell. The signals from this policy shift are powerful. It can quickly reverse market sentiment, add fuel to the decline. Let's talk about public opinion. The United States is a country with a highly developed media. The financial media and so-called experts are on TV every day, happened on the internet, The impact on the stock market is not trivial. Of course, the media is supposed to be independent and objective. But in reality, many media, it is also difficult to escape the fate of being influenced by the big money owner. Gather up and brag when it's time to sing. Don't be soft when you need to sing empty. Remember the aforementioned, some pessimistic predictions and horror headlines? That's probably big capital through the media. To influence the outcome of retail investor psychology. For example, in the 2025 tariff-induced decline, American mainstream media covered it overwhelmingly, how a trade war could devastate the global economy. All kinds of pessimism are emerging one after another, even some usually mild officials. It is also rare to express to the media, extremely concerned about the economic outlook. As soon as these words come out, market confidence is collapsing in a straight line. Many small and medium-sized investors wanted to hold on. It turned out that the news was so scary, scared to cut the meat and leave the venue. On the other hand, the gang has already arranged in advance, big airdrop. And they wanted it to be as scary as possible, because that would help them finish the harvest. In addition, the U.S. government, also good at using diplomatic occasions and official speeches, words to influence the market. For example, a president or a high-ranking official in a public speech suddenly speak harshly to a certain country, threaten to sanction up the ante. This kind of official announcement itself is a major bad news. If someone knew beforehand, you can short and profit in advance. And sometimes, the government will also release a conciliatory tone to stimulate a rebound. For example, hinting to consider suspending tariffs for 90 days, etc. So that at the right moment, induce market sentiment to take a breather. Make the position squaring airdrop position squaring, or the approach to the approach, between a pool. Policy has the voice over its application. I have to. The relationship between the U.S. government and big capital, it's a delicate symbiotic relationship. Many politicians, it has everything to do with Wall Street. The interests of the two are highly intertwined. Someone works as an official in the government to push policy. After leaving the stage, he went to investment banks and hedge funds to make money. This revolving door phenomenon is nothing new. Therefore, when major market events need to be reversed, time-varying policy with capital operation. It's kind of a logical thing to do. Of course, it won't be made clear to the outside world, but tacit cooperation drives market direction. This invisible hand may not show up, but we can feel its presence, a sudden shift from certain policies. The rhythm of singing bad or singing too much from the media, you can lose money, so let's just say that. In the midst of this epic crash, U.S. side policy. Leverage has the voice over market psychological expectations. Acquiesce. Even secretly support the layout of capital power. Really achieved 1 cry, 2 trouble, 3 hanging. Both hard and soft. Let the global market dance according to the script. When the dust settles, another policy U-turn will be gone. Dress up as a savior. This combination punches down. It can be said to play the market in the palm of your hand. Understand this logic. Looking back at the stock market crash in April, it doesn't feel like business conduct. Hidden power. The drama of closing eyes with capital. We often hear about stock market crashes, bond markets, and exchange rates. You're not alone. If a country encounters stocks at the same time, the 3 kills of bond exchange rates, it was an economic disaster. In this global storm, many countries have already tasted the shares. The bitter fruit of the debt will kill 3 times. Stock market plunge. Bond prices fell. Yields soar. Devaluation of domestic currency. One night back before liberation, and the United States is in the process. It appears to be at the center of a storm. In fact, there is a hidden escape route. At first, of course, the U.S. stock market itself also fell sharply. But here's what's interesting. When the world is in a state of panic, dollar assets have instead become popular. Group heating object. This makes even if U.S. stocks fall, the dollar tends to strengthen. Because other places are less safe. Money poured into the safe haven of the dollar in U.S. Treasury bonds. And that's causing the dollar index to go up. The currencies of other countries fell sharply against the dollar. In other words, other countries suffer far more currency pain than the United States. When other countries' currencies depreciate, when it fell more than the U.S. stock market. Global capital allocation perspective. The relative attractiveness of U.S. assets has actually risen. Just like what? Although America has a cold, but other countries are directly hospitalized for severe illness, money can only go to the United States. Bond market. The U.S. national debt is in a period of panic. Instead, it became a pastry. Price increase. Yields fall. The so-called influx of funds into U.S. debt hedging. This and those national bonds that were sold off. In sharp contrast, many emerging market government bonds were sold like crazy, cause prices to crash. Rising interest rates and even the risk of default. And U.S. treasuries are buying because of the safe haven. Seems as stable as Mount Tai. So, the United States is in the storm of the 3 kills in Gujai. In fact, only the stock market was hit. The bond market and the market are relatively stable and even benefited. In comparison, other countries may have stock markets, bond market rates go down together. Certainly, America's own stock market crash is no laughing matter. After all, it involves its own economy and employment. So the critical moment, the Federal Reserve is back in powder. After a crazy round of interest generation, once the situation gets out of hand, the rise of U.S. stocks weighs on the economy. The Fed will immediately switch gears. Stop living, switch to interest rate cuts, even restart printing money loosely. This is the United States' last-ditch expansion strategy. So in a nutshell, just turn on the faucet and water it like crazy. Flood the burning market with massive liquidity. This trick worked hard in both 2008 and 2020. Zero interest rate quantitative easing. Big bailout. The Fed's balance sheet exploded. Before the 2008 financial crisis, Federal Reserve balance sheet less than $1 trillion, a few rounds of Q1 down to more than $40,000 billion. The 2020 epidemic, trillions of dollars in a matter of months. And finally, $7 trillion. This is tantamount to telling the market not to be afraid. Central bank infinite bullet. The bottom line is in the pocket. More funds. Stocks and bonds naturally stop falling and stabilize. They even bounce back. So the American formula is actually: first, use austerity to turn the world upside down. Wait for everyone else. When you can't stand it yourself, decisively turn on the large-scale water release mode. Unplug other people's oxygen masks in the first half. Put on your own oxygen mask in the second half. This harvests others. Saved his life again. Of course, when the water boils, the U.S. stock market can also quickly regain its strength. Who bought U.S. stocks and U.S. bonds cheaply before? Whoever smiles the happiest. And those countries that were harvested, many are not as capricious as the Federal Reserve. They either don't have international reserve currency status, printing money only makes the local currency less valuable, or interest rates are already high. There's no room to drop. In the end, it often depends on the face of the United States, or receive international assistance. This is the prerogative of the overlord. Self-made trouble. And finally, or rely on your own special status to solve the problem. By the way, pick up another handful of wool from others. When the Federal Reserve weighs to save the world, the United States can escape with relative dignity. The recession was contained. The market is back to life. The government can still claim that thanks to our wise decisions, get through it. Little did I know that this happened. The global wealth landscape has been rewritten. The dollar is stronger. Assets are more concentrated in the hands of U.S. investors. Competitors are devastated. The United States may have increased its debt and currency on the surface. Supply, but that little inflationary pressure. It's not a big deal to them. It can also be fully divided through global pricing. Pass it on. So this move by the United States, stock and debt will save themselves after 3 kills. It's like playing with fire. People bring their own fire hydrants. Complete the set goals without risk. The previous 2 crises of 2008 and 2020 have been mentioned many times. Let's take a closer look here. Take a look at the copy. The power of the bottom and the true occurrence of wealth transfer. There are striking parallels in history. As the saying goes, everything has potential. Let's talk about the 2008 financial crisis first. When the U.S. subprime mortgage crisis broke out, the collapse of Lehman Brothers triggered a global stock market crash. Shares fell by more than half from high to low. Bankruptcy, the housing bubble burst. The economy fell into the Great Recession. Many ordinary people suffered heavy losses at that time. Pension cut in half. The house was confiscated by the bank. Rise of unemployment. In a panic, most people shunned selling their assets. Just ask for cash to live in peace. However, there is a group of people in this hellish scene. Saw the entrance to heaven? Investors with vision and capital. Start bottom fishing. The most classic, no better than Warren Buffett himself. In the depths of the 2008 crisis, examples of entering the market to assist large enterprises. He sells stocks and hoards money at peak times. When the market hits its limit, act immediately. Invested in Kaohsiung on favorable terms. General Electric and other companies, for example. $5 billion for Kaohsiung, in exchange for a preferred dividend of up to 10% and the right to buy shares in the future. You know, it was during the financial crisis. Kaohsiung urgently needs cash to tide over the difficulties. I have to accept this attitude towards Buffett. Extremely favorable terms. As a result, as the crisis eased, Kaohsiung's stock rebounded. Buffett makes a big deal. Many private offering funds bought a bunch of cheap real estate at that time. Enterprise equity. After the economy recovers, it will be sold. Profits have doubled. After the crisis, the wealth gap in the United States is not falling, it is rising. As asset prices recover to even new highs, the wealth of the wealthy who own assets has skyrocketed and was forced to sell the house at the bottom, the middle class and the poor in stocks. Then the rebound opportunity is forever missed. It can be said that the bottom fishing operation in 2008 achieved a group of wealthy newcomers. It also allows the established rich to make their positions more stable. As someone said, don't waste every serious crisis, because it was the spring of wealth for the few. Another look at the flash crash triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. In March of that year, the global stock market has experienced its worst ever. One of the fast plunges. U.S. stocks fell by more than 30% in less than a month. Fuse mechanism continuous trigger. It feels like the end of the world is coming. At that time, many retail investors cut their positions and left in extreme panic, for fear of assets being cleared. However, it is admirable that the market then bottomed out in a very short time. At the Federal Reserve, unlimited easing in government, the double effect of stimulus checks. The stock market goes all the way to the Jedi counterattack, not only regained lost ground, but also set new highs. And during this period, large capital and institutional investors. But the big fish made a vote. For example, there's a famous hedge fund boss, Bill Ackerman. Early epidemic. He first peeled off the paint by buying credit default CDS. Short the corporate bond market, make nearly 100 times the profit. Over $2 billion in revenue. In the days when the market was most panicked, he publicly issued a pessimistic statement warning of the coming of the end. The results scared a lot of investors. But in the blink of an eye, he announced another position squaring those airdrop profit positions. Backhand at a low level to overtake hundreds of millions of enemy stocks. Then the market rebounded in retaliation. His long positions are also very profitable. This operation raises questions. Did he use his public opinion influence to shape market expectations? Serve yourself, no matter what the truth is. Finally, it seems, he managed to make airdrop money first in a crisis, make more long money. Textbook style, a personal version of wealth transfer. A broader perspective. The market in 2020 let those investors who insist on bottom fishing reap a lot of rewards, whether it's buying high-quality technology stocks or an index fund guy. As long as that spring, after bravely entering the field, assets doubled in just 1 year. On the contrary, many retail investors who were scared away. In the end, I found myself selling the basket at a low point. Later, it became a chicken cake in someone else's hands. After that incident, it has also created more billionaires. Tech giant shares soar. Let the founder's wealth rise. Waldorf Wing Division, record bonuses awarded for excess profits. On the other hand, an elderly person with a pension of tens of thousands of dollars, sold at rock bottom and never had the courage to buy it back. I can only watch the market soar and sigh. The bottom fishing legends of these two crises tell us, when others panic, crises often present amazing opportunities. Of course, the premise is that you have to have capital, have the judgment to last until then. And often those who can really seize such opportunities. It's the ones who are well-informed, the resource-rich class. So after every major crisis, brings about a sharper divide between the rich and the poor. Wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few. Simply put, history has proven time and time again. Crisis is an opportunity to redistribute wealth. It was 2008, 2020, future 2025. If the great crash were to happen, I'm afraid it's the same. After listening to all of the above, many people may be hairy. We ordinary people, isn't it the life of the chives that make people fish, can only stare at the transfer of wealth. Are you powerless? Don't worry, although the general trend is difficult to change. But ordinary people are not defenseless. The so-called green mountains are left, not afraid of running out of firewood. In troubled times, survival matters. We can start from the following aspects. Try to protect yourself, even waiting for an opportunity. First, maintain sufficient cash flow. In the midst of a financial crisis, cash is oxygen. Make sure you have an adequate cushion of funds. Expenses for the next year or two. Don't over-indebted, let alone the necessary funds for living. It's all about investment. Only solid cash flow. You can face the ups and downs of the market calmly, not being forced to sell assets at rock bottom. Think about those who liquidated their positions and went bankrupt in a crisis. A lot of it is because of high leverage. The cash flow is broken and the position squaring is forced. If you have a cash reserve on hand, the market is down, you don't have to sell it. You can even bargain on the contrary. If you have no money to pay off the loan, it can only be sold passively. You're falling into someone else's trap. So reduce the debt ratio. It is very important to reserve emergency funds. As the saying goes, cash is king. It's true in extreme moments. Keep the money in your hands. At least the initiative is still there. Second, appropriate allocation of safe haven assets. Gold has been recognized as a safe haven for thousands of years. When the currency depreciates, when inflation is high or political instability occurs, gold can often hold or even appreciate in value. Big money printing in the United States. In the context of countries' exchange rates chasing each other down, the value of gold will not be arbitrarily diluted. For ordinary people, allocate some gold. You can insure your portfolio. So in addition, some monetary assets that are considered safe havens. It's also worth considering. So the dollar, in many emerging market crises, act as a safe haven. If you are in a country with an unstable currency, hold part of the dollar, hard currency, such as the Swiss franc. You can avoid the erosion of your wealth by the local currency plaque. Of course, purchase these safe haven assets is to prevent the worst. Not for speculative profit, so it doesn't have to be that high. But something is better than nothing. As the joke goes, when the end comes, gold may not save the world, but the one who can save you. The third reason is to grasp the opportunity to enter the market. If you really look forward to a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for bottom fishing, it's about strategy. Instead of rushing in with a fever in the forehead, historical experience shows that real market bottoms often emerge in times of extreme despair. The kind of ant who doesn't even trade stocks is in the news. I'm scolding the stock market scam. This atmosphere of national pessimism often means that the selling power has run out. The market may not be far from bottoming out. In other words, when the whole market is scared to death, when no one dares to touch the stock, it's when a few cool people sneak in. The so-called people who do not invest also go to the rooftop. It's this panic that describes desperate scene. Look the other way. This is often a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for bottom fishing. But bottom fishing also requires strategy. Don't try to magically step on the absolute lowest point. It's almost impossible. The smarter approach is to enter the market in batches, as the market falls up the ante. So even if there is a decline later, you can also fill the position calmly, lowering costs. Once lucky, grab the area near the bottom. Don't take all of them immediately because of a little rebound. You can set a goal, or be patient and hold the plan. Let high-quality assets appreciate as the economy recovers. Of course, the premise is that you choose the plot. It's a good thing that withstands the test of the storm. Don't be impulsive. Picked up the sunset industry of Sunset West Mountain, and that would be tragic. Fourth, adhere to discipline and spread risk. All kinds of news are flying in the financial crisis. Ordinary people need to stabilize their mentality. Don't listen to the wind, it's rain. Stick to your investment discipline, including not adding leverage at will. Don't blindly follow the trend. Kill all out of the party. Many people liquidate their positions in a crisis. In fact, it is because of excessive borrowing and speculation. Risk tolerance is too low. The dream of getting rich overnight is alluring, but more importantly, don't get rich overnight. Remember the risk control. I would rather miss it. Don't do it wrong. In addition, we need to know how to diversify our investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Different assets. The appropriate allocation of different markets can reduce the market crash is a blow to your wealth. For example, in addition to stocks, you can hold some bonds, real estate, even new safe haven options like Bitcoin. But it's also risky. Be cautious. Anyway, scattering increases your chances of surviving in troubled times. Even if an investment steps on thunder, stability or rebound in other assets can also help you get through difficult times. It's like playing a game. Team up, not all mages or all warriors. Only by matching well can we have both offense and defense. One last word. Facing a possible epic crash. What ordinary people have to do is actually 2 words to save their lives. Preserve financial life infra, to wait for the turnaround to appear. Don't think you can beat Wall Street schemers. But don't give up and think that chives are destined. Prepare for the worst. Strive for the best result, if it really arrives everywhere. Asset cabbage price moment. You at least have the capital to pick up a few cabbages. If the storm wasn't as bad as imagined, and you're safe because you're prepared, well, it's pretty easy to say I survived. To be eligible for big bargains, financial markt is the norm. The crisis will pass sooner or later. When the dust settles, you look back, maybe you're glad you've got your pocket, and seize that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Successfully jumped from leak to the wise investor harvesting others by leaks. Of course, this transition requires a cool head, intellectual preparation, and a little luck. May everyone stay safe during this storm. Last laugh.